Assalamualaikum everyone. How are you? I hope you're fine. Today we were going to discuss about another case regarding natural selection. In my last lecture, we discussed about how natural selection operates and how we see the survival and the fitness of the particular genotype. And today we will see another case in which we specifically see the very beautiful example of peppered moth in evolution. This is the best example that explains how evolution and how natural selection basically operates. So let's see, have a look of that. I want you to see first see the pic. This is light peppered, this is the peppered moth, peppered color, and this is the dark color moth. Okay, both have definitely different genotypes and different alleles that are controlling the trait color. And we would see how natural selection selects the melanic form, the dark form, and the light form, peppered form. Now, in the beginning, the form of light peppered was always found until the 18th century in Britain, but a dark melanic form was first recorded in 1848. The melanic forms increases up to 90% in the polluted areas. Now, focus on this point. In unpolluted areas, the light form remained common. Clean air laws were passed in the mid 20th century and the frequency of melanic form decreased. Now, see, we see that in polluted environment, the melanic form increases, means this particular genotype increases in the environment, and the light peppered form decreases. And before, when there was no industrial revolution and the environment was clean in Britain in 18th century, the more common form is this light peppered form. This is very easy. I think no confusion there. Now move next. So we will be looking forward to see how natural selection operates in the thickness of melanic and light peppered form. In what way it is acting either through bird predation or by other factors. See, natural selection always operates through some dimensions. Okay, it works through some predation or some other scenarios, like how a particular genotype or how a particular organism called to be a fit organism and have a high survival rate. It depends upon how it responds to the predation, to the environment, and so many factors. Now, the light form has a genotype that is homozygous recessive, and the melanic form represented as dominant homozygous, that is capital C, capital C. So three methods to find how natural selection operates and the fitness of melanic and light form in this case is below. Now we see the first form, estimation of fitness by using the rate of change in gene frequency. The first estimation of fitness was made by Harlan in 1924. For the first method, we need measurements of frequencies of the different color forms at least 2 times. This is simply a procedure of the experiment that they see that they actually measure the frequencies of different colors, frequencies of this light peppered and the frequency of this melanic peppered. Cool. The melanic form was first seen in 1848. Because in the 18th century, the industrial revolution in the Britain was started. But it was also present before in a very less proportion. It doesn't mean that the melanic form only appears in after the industrial revolution in Britain, and before that there was no melanic form. No, it is not like that. But the the melanic form is present in very little amount at that time. Now see why it is present in very little amount. This is present in the low frequency because of the mutation selection balance. Mutation selection balance means that the gene is disadvantageous and exists as low frequency and determined by the balance between being formed by the mutation and being lost by the selection. See, at that time when the environment was clean, melanic form was also existed. Mutation was also occurred in the light purple form in the past, in the very past, before 18th century. But the frequency of this melanic form was low because of the mutation selection balance. Nature, at that particular time, nature selects the peppered form. because the environment was clean, and we see how why nature selects which form. Right now I want you to focus here, like nature selects the uh, peppered form, and melanic form was in a low frequency, and it was balanced by the mutation selection balance. Basically this melanic form is the mutation, and mutation selection balance basically controlling this gene frequency, and it is low at that time. Cool. And the low frequency is determined by a balance between being found by the mutation and being lost by the selection. Let's say that mutation will occur in the peppered form, and melanic form appeared in the 18th century when the air and the environment was clean, right? But at that particular time nature selects which form, peppered form, light form. Cool. So it was lost by the selection. Mutation forms this melanic type, and selection will apply, and this particular gene will lost. Okay, because it won't survive in the environment because of the selection. I hope everything is clear to you now. Now move to the next point. Typical mutation rates for genes are about 10 raised to power minus 6, and a selective disadvantage is of about 10% for the melanic mutants in pre-industrial time, means before industrial times, may be approximately correct. By using these figures and calculations, we get the frequency of the melanic C gene, that is 10 raised to power minus 5 up to the year 1848. By 1898, the frequency of light color genotype was 1 to 10% in polluted areas. See, in the pre-industrial case, the mutation rates and the genes of the dark melanic form was 10%. And what happened next? Generation after generation, after in the post-industrial case, when the environment get polluted, the the genotype of light form get 10%. See, it means if this is 10%, that is obvious that at that time melanic form was more dominant. Cool. And you have to focus here. At that time when it was in the low frequency, the melanic mutant is present in the low frequency, and it was only just 10%, and the light peppered form was dominant. And after the industrial revolution, the frequency of light genotype was 10%. Cool. The change over the 50 generation is estimated and showed that the survival rate for the peppered moth is 2 by third after 50 generations. Cool. In the beginning it was dominant, but after that, how much survival rate it has? It has 2 by third survival rate after 50 generations. Now move to the next case. How can we determine how natural selection operates? It was our first estimation of the fitness by using change in the gene frequency, that how gene frequency changes, and that is our second case, and that how natural selection selects. The second case deals with the fitness from the survivorship of different genotypes in mark recapture experiment. Focus on this mark recapture experiment. Kettlewell measured survival rates by mark recapture experiment in the field. The gene frequency change was thought to be produced by the survival difference between the two forms of moth in nature rather than differential fertility. Cool. Now let's see about what he did in the experiment. He released melanic and light colored form moths, peppered moth in non proportion in polluted and unpolluted regions. Cool. And then later recaught some of the moths which are attracted to mercury vapor lamps. All right, he observed both of the forms in polluted and unpolluted environment, and then calculate the number. He counted the proportion of melanic and light colored moths in moths recaptured from the two areas. Okay, obviously two areas. In Birmingham, that is a polluted area, and Dean Wood, I don't know how to pronounce it, an unpolluted forest in UK. The proportions in the recaptured moths are as we should expect. More light colored moths in the, this is something unpolluted region in UK samples, and more melanic moths in the Birmingham samples. In Birmingham, melanic moths were recaptured at about twice the rate of light-colored ones, implying S is equals to that is selection coefficient 0.57. This is a higher fitness difference than S is equals to 0.33 implied by the change in the gene frequency. Now see, at that point the selection coefficient is 0.33, even though this is a very good experiment by gene frequency. So the selection coefficient at that particular case, in that particular case is 0.33, but in the experiment, in the mark recapture experiment, the selection coefficient that nature selects that particular gene, and the selection coefficient is very high for that. It means the recessive one should be very very low in the environment, or that the gene that the nature don't select, it means it face a very very tough time. So now see, where we are. Okay, yes, this is a higher fitness difference than our previous case. Both estimates are uncertain. It could have a number of causes, um, because both the cases have a difference in their readings, and the possible causes include sampling error in the market capture experiments and errors in the assumptions of the estimate from the gene frequency changes. Cool. These are the two errors. I hope everything is clear. I wanted to see this experiment also. This is what light moths that were observed 18 and melanic moths 140 in Birmingham. Obviously, it is polluted and melanic form is more present and more dominant. Expected, what are the expected results? Light moths should be 36 and melanic form should be 122, means more. Both in both form, melanic form should be more and expected form should be less. But I need to focus here. I need you to put focus on the readings. See, do you see? Even though they expect that at polluted environment, the frequency of the light moths should be less, and the frequency should be high. But in their expectations, they expected that the melanic form has a higher frequency, but in practical form what they observed, the melanic form was very high, means it crosses their expectations. Cool. And the relative fitness was given as 0.43 for this light form, and 1, obviously 1, which we in the previous lecture we mentioned that the relative fitness 1 as 100%, that this nature selects 100% this particular genotype or this particular organism in this form. For your ease I should say like this. Okay, cool. Cool, 100%. Okay, and in the unpolluted case, what they observed, numbers recaptured observed 67 and 32 for melanic moths, and expected, what they expected, 53 and 46. Now again, it is somewhat crossing their expectation, but see the same cases in the unpolluted case also. And the relative fitness is 1 for light peppered moth in that case, and 0.55 for 0.55 for melanic moth. Yes, 0.5 in melanic form. And what is the value of relative fitness for light moths is 0.43. Almost same. 0.55, 0.43 means they have the selection coefficient same. All right. Now move to the next thing. Bird predation factor. This is the last factor almost. Bird predation is the agent of the natural selection. Cool. The light colored form is better camouflaged in unpolluted woods and therefore less likely to be eaten by visually hunting birds. but smoke pollution killed the lichens that covered the trees, after which the melanic form was better camouflaged. Several lines of evidence support Kettlewell's explanation. Bird predation is not supposed widely by everyone, however. Like scientists said that due to bird predation in unpolluted woods, the light colored form is better camouflaged, cool, and it would be difficult for the birds to capture them. And in polluted form, the melanic form is more dominant because bird predation is not much easier, because for the birds don't see and they camouflage better in the pollution and in the smoke region. We looked above at the fitness estimation from gene frequency changes, and from our creep capture experiment, Kettlewell and other also estimate fitness. Fitness basically means the nature selection. Okay, fitness, the fitness of one particular type, and who controls the fitness? Ultimately, natural selection. By pinning out dead moths of the two forms on the tree trunk in polluted and unpolluted areas. He then measured how many moths of each disappeared over time. These experiments were particularly criticized after it was discovered in the 1980s that peppered moths do not naturally settle on the tree trunks but on the higher branches and the twigs of the trees. Now they say that the bird predation factor and this particular thing that smoke killed the lichens and covered the trees, and that various science various scientists don't support this evidence, because they think that they evident that most of the pepper settled on the tree trunks, not on the all over. They have the evidence that they disagree with their experiment. Okay. These experiments were particularly criticized. However, Kettle's case does not depend on these pin-out experiments and what they said, that they settled on the trunks or on the branches, wherever they settled doesn't matter. Actually, they settled on the trees. The moth settled on the trees, and bird predation also occurred at that point. Okay. Now, another factor, that is migration and inherent factor. Cook in 2000 also worked on these two forms of the moths. Evidence has also been put forward for other factors in addition to bird predation. Migration is one extra factor. Now, other scientists also gives evidence to that how nature works. They said that migration might be the case. The geographic distribution of the two forms does not exactly fit Kettlewell's theory. The melanic form had a frequency of up to 80% in East Anglia, where pollution is very low. Now, see again that that assumption again, proves to be false. And in some polluted areas, the dark form did not seem to have a high enough frequency. Means they said that the peppered, like the peppered and the melanic form, don't have any concern with the pollution and clean environment. Actually, migration may explain why melanic moths are found in some unpolluted areas such as eastern Zealand, while light-colored moths persisted in polluted areas where they were less well camouflaged. See, the peppered moths might migrate from the light form migrated to the polluted area more due to the more migration, because male moth can travel up to 100 meters and 1.1 kilometers, 100 centimeters, and I don't know, I guess roughly 1.2 kilometers. Yeah, I heard. So they travel basically long. A second additional factor is that the two forms may differ in fitness independently of the bird predation. Creed collected all the measurements that had been made on survival to adulthood in the laboratory. And now he studied the factor in the laboratory. Now this is interesting. They analyzed the results of 83 broods containing offsprings, 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 12,569 offsprings. They concluded that melanic homozygotes are more and have an inherent advantage, and fitness advantage means they are very lucky, and they are inherent advantage. The melanic form has the inherent advantage that they are present in the more form. Their genes are more fitted and more strong, I should say. And melanic moths replaced light moths even in the bird predation, because they have a strong genotype and they are very fit. So that's why they replaced the light form. The melanic form replaced the light form due to inherent advantage. That is something that is inherited, and the melanic form formed after the mutation. So it would take a time for the melanic form to overcome the light moths. Okay. In unpolluted areas, light colored moths may remain only because birds eat more of the conspicuous melanic moths. Now, see, focus on that thing. They want to say that this is obvious that melanic form increases in every case, even in the polluted or in the unpolluted areas. But the birds eat more of the melanic moths in the polluted areas. That's why the white color or light peppered form appears more. But according to genetic scenario and breeding scenario and the population, they are present in the more form. Basically, they're telling that nature selects melanic form and they produced in more form, but ultimately due to the bird predation in the in the polluted in the unpolluted region, the melanic form decreases because they are more visible in the unpolluted form. The dark colored form is more visible to the birds. So the conclusion is the industrial melanism of the peppered moth is a classic example of natural selection. It can be used to illustrate the one locus two allele model of the selection. The model can use to make a rough estimate of the difference in the fitness between the two forms of moth using their frequencies. We did this in the first attempt at different times. The fitness can also be estimated from mark recapture experiment that we studied in the second point. Good evidence exists that bird predation is at least partly the result of selection that we studied in the third point, but some biologists suggest other factors are at work too. Cool. So this is something. This theory is the amalgam of all these bird predation factor, fitness factor, migration, mark recapture experiment. So all the evidences are basically true. In short, cool. Do whatever resonates to you. But do whatever you find that is cool. All right. I hope you like the video. And if you want to get the notes, I will put the link in the description box.